Welcome to the Statesboro Herald's 2014 Pigskin Pick'em, brought to you by Seasons of Japan Restaurant and Dr. Troy M. Lawhorn at Statesboro Oral and Maxillofacial Surgery and Dental Implant Center.
And welcome to week 6 of our Pigskin Pick'em. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony from the Statesboro Herald, Matt Yogas from the Statesboro Herald. Eddie Ledbetter couldn't be with us today. A little change in our shooting schedule. So we will say, though, congratulations to Eddie. He is currently in first place at 26-14 overall, followed by Mike Anthony at 24-16. Yours truly even at 20-20, and Matt Yogas just a game back, 19-21 on the season.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into this week. We've got 4 high school and 4 college games to get to. Let's begin with the Georgia Southern Eagles. Georgia Southern, the only team in the FBS right now, Mike Anthony, that is perfect against the spread. So if you take them every week, you'd be doing great. Unfortunately, a couple of us haven't. Your thoughts on the game at New Mexico State? 17-point favorites for Georgia Southern.
Well, we've covered this before this year. For years and years going back, if there's a line on a Georgia Southern game, you take the Eagles, you will win. If you've done it for the last 5 years, you're probably doing this from the Bellagio, from your penthouse right now. You've made so much money. Vegas can't get a handle on the Eagles. They just don't know what to do. They thought that they compensated enough last week, making them a big favorite in a rivalry game that's always close. The Eagles don't care. They go out and blow that point spread out of the water. This week, I'm thinking it might be a little bit low. Of course, this is New Mexico State, a team they're seeing for the first time. Usually those don't result in too many blowouts, but New Mexico State, what do they not do well? They don't defend the run. What does Georgia Southern do extraordinarily well? They run the ball. I don't think that being just north of the border matters. I don't think a long flight matters. Georgia Southern's going to win this one easily. I see another 20-plus point win.
Matt Yogas.
Well, Georgia Southern covered the spread last week by a half a point. I don't know if that's necessarily blowing it out of the water.
Blew it out of the water. Did you win money if you bet on them? Blew it out of the water.
Well, there you go. There you go. Win's a win, for me especially, since
right.
I can't seem to get anything right. But, again, my Twitter handle has been very calm lately. I'm going to stick with the Eagles because that keeps people from blowing it up.
All right, so we got 2 Eagles. Let's go with 3. I might as well. I'm thinking that Georgia Southern is due for at least a little bit of a letdown. They played so well, and how many weeks in a row do you keep on rolling, 7-11?
You got to ride the heater.
I'm going with Georgia Southern as well. So we got 3 Georgia Southerns. I'm assuming Eddie would probably go with Georgia Southern, but we'll get his picks, and they'll be in the paper at least this week. All right, moving on, we have Arkansas State. We're staying in the Sun Belt here. A 9-point favorite over UL Monroe. UL Monroe right up there with the Eagles right now. Your thoughts, Mike Anthony, on a 9-point Arkansas?
I think this might be a little bit of an overreaction by the odds makers. Monroe, a big favorite last week against a horrible Troy team, or at least a Troy team that had looked horrible up until last week. They keep it close. Monroe struggles a little bit. Arkansas State has yet to play a Sun Belt game. I believe they're the only team that hasn't played a Sun Belt game yet. They've looked pretty good so far. I think that they might be favored by a few too many, but seeing as how this is at home, their fans are getting behind them. They see that there's blood in the water with the Louisiana team struggling. I think Arkansas State finds a way to cover this.
Matt Yogas, 9 points. Is that too much or right about?
9 seems a little high for 2 teams that are kind of at the top of the conference right now. Like mentioned, Arkansas State hasn't actually played a conference game yet, but they've probably played as good or better than anybody else in the conference, maybe excluding Georgia Southern. So 9 seems high. I'm going to take the road dog to cover, not to win the game.
All right, so you have Arkansas State.
Arkansas State.
You're going with Monroe. I think I'm going to go with Monroe as well. I'm flip-flopping back. Arkansas State. Right now, they'll be their first game in the conference, and I think Monroe gets their first loss in the conference. So let's go with UL Monroe. Yogas is going with the home dog, or the road dog. And wait a minute.
I'm going with Arkansas
totally
State.
Screwing this up.
You and Mike are taking Arkansas
State. We're messing this up. We'll fix this in post-production. Right? Here we go. 2 Arkansas States, 1 UL Monroe. My apologies. Let's get into
When all else fails, just pick the opposite of what I do, and you'll be doing at least over 500.
Hey, that's the game plan here. All right, we got the Georgia Bulldogs, 32.5-point favorites against Vandy. My, how Vandy has fallen since last year, doing as well as they did. Coach Franklin, of course, gone now at Penn State. Georgia, 32.5 against Vandy, who has traditionally given Georgia a little bit of a problem.
Well, I'm going to take the incredibly scientific approach here. Georgia looked great in their first game, struggled in their second. Blew Troy out of the water in their third game, struggled against Tennessee. They're due for a big game. Their opponent is more than happy to give up big games to people. It's a lot of points, but I'll take UGA.
Matt Yogus.
Well, Tennessee would have won the game last week if their quarterback didn't get hurt. Let's not forget about that. Vanderbilt, okay, here's my scientific approach to this. James Franklin, everybody thought he was the reason they were so successful last year, but he just lost to Northwestern at Penn State. So clearly James Franklin wasn't the reason Vanderbilt beat Georgia last year, which means Vanderbilt has better football players than Georgia does. Bear with me now, which means Vanderbilt will win the football game. So
Wow.
I got to go with the Doors.
You're going with an upset with Vandy winning. Wow. We'll have to replay this if this actually happens. I think I'm going to have to go against Matt Yogus.
We'll
And
get the
go.
balloon drop ready if they actually win that game.
I'm going with Mike. I think every other, I kind of like those trends when you see them happening. I think Georgia's due a big game. So going with the Bulldogs here. Yogus is going with Vandy. And Mike is going with the Bulldogs.
I'm
as well.
poised for a big jump in the standings.
That's right. If you're right, hey, it's going to look good for you. All right, wrapping up our college picks, we have the Miami Hurricanes, 2-point favorites going to Georgia Tech. Tech last week had the week off. Mike, your thoughts on this? This one looks a little smelly.
Well, you say it looks smelly, but I think that might be a little bit of a short memory. Of course, Georgia Tech, they're able to upset Virginia Tech. That was a big win, but you forget that they look pretty iffy against Wofford. I think that some people who aren't realizing how well Georgia Southern's played are still holding that game against Tech, blowing a big lead no matter who you're playing. You don't want to give up 4 touchdown leads. And Miami, traditionally, or at least in the last few years, they've been able to figure out Paul Johnson's defense. But you know who else had them figured out? Virginia Tech. They stuffed them for years and years. Georgia Tech came out on fire. They weren't able to handle it. Miami's defense, I don't think, is as good as Virginia Tech's. I like Georgia Tech to keep on rolling. They stay undefeated.
I like the way you kind of veered left and then you turned right really quick.
Yeah.
Yogus tends to do that a lot. Matt Yogus.
Just when you think we're going to zig, we zag.
We're entertainers also.
That's right.
We're going to dance later.
I think this is kind of smelly too. I like Georgia Tech at home. They play better at home. They're undefeated right now. They have plenty of reason to want to stay undefeated because they want to help Georgia Southern strength the schedule out.
That's the reason.
So,
We're all in
right.
this together.
That's what they're thinking about. So I like Georgia Tech at home. I think they get the job done. I think with the extra week to prepare, they get the win.
I'm still shocked that Georgia Tech is an underdog in this game. This was one of those games that I think it smells. It should be. I think Georgia Tech by anywhere between 3 and 7. It's Miami by 2. I'm going that Vegas knows something that I don't, and I'm running to the smell, taking the U.
Everybody knows something that I don't.
And then we got 2 Georgia Tech picks here for my compadres. All right, that'll wrap it up for the college. Let's get into the high school. Mike, Statesboro High School has not won a game. Does not look to get much better as they hit the road to Coffee County. 28-point underdogs. Give us your thoughts on this one.
My only thought is, assuming that we were doing this for years and years back, when was the last time Statesboro High would have ever been a 28-point underdog
I can't
to
see
anybody?
it. No.
Knowing what we know about Griffin last year, maybe you would have made it that. But Coffee, they're a bunch of bad dudes. They're coming down from 6A where they had to contend with, for my money, one of the best regions in the entire country with some of the teams that they had to mix it up with there. Now they're taking it out on the 5A competition. Their only loss this year to the number 1 ranked Ware County team that Statesboro have to play later this year when you'll probably see your next 28-point spread. I love the Devils. I'll be there. I'll be covering them. But I don't know if they've got enough gas in the tank to keep up with Coffee. I think Coffee runs away with it.
All right, Matt. 28 was not enough for Mike.
It's, oof.
There's probably some kind of a caffeine coffee joke somewhere in there, but man, I don't know where it is. And Statesboro's been losing me some points lately, so I got to take coffee in this one.
You know, I got Mike to make this from 21, I think, where he had started, to bump it up to 28 so that maybe a few people would take Statesboro. So far, that hasn't worked.
You're the big money. You moved the line there.
I'm going to go. I got to go with the Blue Devils to finally rebound. Maybe they don't win the game, but got to keep it respectable here. I know it's on the road, which makes it even tougher. I'm going with the Blue Devils. And if that means I have to lose, then so be it. Coffee, coffee. Get your coffee. Southeast Bullock, coming off a bye week. They have not won a game yet this year, but this is when the games really start to matter for the Yellow Jackets. These are the sub-region games. They're taking on Beach. Beach has given them at least a battle, if not, they won the game a couple years ago, Mike. Right now, SEB 3.5-point favorites at home.
Yeah, last year this is a pretty easy one for the Jackets. They were at home again. They keep buying out these Savannah teams that play at Fred Shaver Field. Beach, a 1-9 squad last year. Not much of a competition for the Jackets. This year, though, Beach already with 2 wins, so you know they've got a little bit coming back. Definitely a little more offense. But I think this is where the Yellow Jackets stop the bleeding. They get back on track. They've got what it takes to take down Beach. It's just a matter of playing good fundamental football. If they don't make any mistakes, they can win this one by 2 touchdowns.
All right, Matt Yogus, your thoughts on this one?
I still think Southeast Bullock's a playoff team, so I think this is where it starts. You're absolutely right. They get the win here and build a little momentum heading through that region schedule.
I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs or not, but I see them probably getting the 2 out of the sub-region, and I think it begins with a victory over Beach. So we're all going with the Yellow Jackets in this one. Southeast Bullock to cover the 3 and a hook there at Fred Shaver Field. All right, Portal Panthers lost 2 in a row, lost them both pretty badly. This last one, I think we both, or all of us, kind of thought that they'd at least put up a little more of a battle. Had some miscues on special teams in the punting game. Ended up getting blown out. This time they're on the road at Claxton. Claxton beat Bryan County. Bryan County beat SEB. How does it Portal fare in that? Let's say 14. They're getting 14 at Claxton.
Well, I think Portal definitely rebounds. It plays a much more fundamentally sound game this week. That's usually something you don't see out of the Panthers. They've had their struggles, but usually it has to do with maybe a lack of talent at one specific area or a lack of depth, which you're always battling with. You usually don't see fumbles and miscues. However, Claxton, they've been building steam. They lost their first game, and ever since then they've been gaining momentum. A big win over ECI, that's always impressive. And the most impressive thing they have is Zach Grant. You remember he was running up the yards for Statesboro last year. He came from Claxton 2 years ago, and in that Portal game 2 years ago, he ran wild, over 200 yards against the Panthers. This is a 13-9 game, or 13-8 game last year when these two teams played. Claxton barely won. With Zach Grant, I think that puts those extra points up on the board. Claxton covers it.
All right, Matt Yogus, Mike likes Claxton in
The
the
fighting Zach Grants.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take Zach Grant off of Claxton's team, put him on Statesboro's team. I'd take Statesboro and Portal this week, but I don't think I can take either of them. Claxton at home, love the Pecan Grove. I'll take the Tigers.
Neat environment for a football game there in the Pecan Grove. I think Portal keeps it respectable in this game. 14 points, a little too much. I'm taking the Panthers to cover here. While you two continue to go with I guess you both went with SEB. So we got Claxton and Claxton. And we wrap things up once again with the Bullock Academy Gators. Last week on the road facing the AAA state champs. A little too tall task. They end up falling in that one pretty heavy. This week they get to come back home. They're not playing a state champion from a year ago. They're taking on Brentwood. They're a 7-point favorite. Mike, you made it 7. What do you think about this?
Well, they've had a couple of non-region games where they just totally outclassed their opponents earlier in the year. Then they had that run of 3 state champions. They went 0-3 against them. They finally find something right in the middle, right before the region schedule starts. I think this is a good test to see where the Gators are really at. This is more of their speed of what they're going to face in region play the rest of the season. They're a little banged up, but I think they've got what it takes. They're going to be at home. They don't want to start the same sort of losing streak that kind of put them down and out of the state playoffs last year. Those seniors are stepping up. I know they really want to get this one. I think they do it. They win this one by 10.
Matt.
Well, just to make compelling television, put me down for the opposite of whoever you've got, because so far you've picked the opposite of what I've picked for every game. So
Wow.
let's just keep it going.
But you know what?
Except GSU. We all got the Eagles.
That could still end up being that we're both 500.
Yeah.
It does not mean that one of us is going to be a perfect 8-0, although I wouldn't be surprised because I lost all the college picks last week. You're going with the opposite of me. I'm going with Bullock Academy, so that means you're taking Brentwood in this.
Compelling television.
All right, with compelling television aside, BA, Yogas going Brentwood, and BA for Mike Anthony as well. All right, well, that'll wrap it up for this week's Pigskin Pick'em for Mike Anthony, Matt Yogas, and Eddie Ledbetter, who will be joining us next week. I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.